Morning, moms and Master Books. Hope you're having a fantastic week. I know a lot of you have started the first week of school, and we're excited to see the reports of your kiddos loving the curriculum and things starting off excellent. If you placed your order with us, I just ask for patience. We've had over 4,000 orders in the last 2 weeks, and our warehouse is buzzing. We've been down there. Just about everybody's been down there packing boxes and sending things out to get everything, and we're waiting on some back orders and stuff like that as well. So be patient, please, and we're trying to get out the orders as quickly as possible. All right, so today is Teaching Tips Day, Teaching Tips Thursday. And if you're watching, be sure to comment for a chance to have 2,500 reward points added to your account, because we love hearing from you and getting your feedback on these videos. It really helps us know what videos are resonating and what kind of topics to talk about. But happiness in our homeschools. You know, this is one of the things that we tend to see. A big obstacle, right, is the happiness factor in our homes, and when it comes to homeschooling and what our expectations are versus what reality is. And my mentor used to say the secret to happiness, Randy, is low expectations, which in some ways is probably right, but in other ways, I don't know that I would encourage people to have low expectations. I think it's important that we have goals, and I think it's important that we have high expectations for our students and for our lives, the lives that we live. But I think that we have to look at the word expectations, and we have to put it in perspective to the bigger picture. So what exactly is an expectation? Expectations, by definition, is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. A belief that someone will or should act or achieve on something. No, a belief that someone will or should achieve something. Expectations, right? They actually are related to things outside our control. A strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. All of those future, other circumstances, anything like that, typically are outside our control. A belief that someone will or should achieve something. Just by definition, the expectations, the word expectations, gives us kind of parameters for what we believe should happen, and often what we believe should happen isn't fully in our control. So bear with me a bit as I unpack this a little bit on expectations. We have expectations in our relationships. There's expectations in our marriages, in our relationships with friends. There's expectations with our kids, in our homeschools. We have expectations in life. Really, how I think my life is going to turn out from the time I'm a young kid and I begin dreaming about what the future is going to look like, and I have expectations for my wife and how she's going to behave, and how she's going to look, and what our home is going to look like, and what kind of jobs I'm going to have. And when reality hits those expectations, oftentimes that's where anxiety and depression and anger and all of these disappointments begin to settle in. And it's hard to be content with reality when my expectations are so high. Some of my biggest challenges in marriage have been because I've placed these expectations on Kristen for who she should be and how she should perform and what she should allow, et cetera, that weren't necessarily based in reality. And then been frustrated, disappointed, unloving because she didn't measure up to that expectation that I have. And really, let's talk a little bit. Perfectionism. What is perfectionism? Perfectionism is high expectations, whether it's high expectations for ourselves or others. And again, I don't think that we shouldn't have high standards. I think we should have high standards. But I think when we have these expectations and we hold to them, in a way, we remove God from the equation, because essentially we're saying this is what should happen in the future, and we have no control over that. So when reality doesn't meet expectations, that's where we see this friction, right? Like, so when I'm pastoring, I had some very challenging funerals that I had to perform. And one of them in particular just had a sense of unfairness to it. And he was a young soldier who had lost both of his legs. He was a friend of the family, and he had spent 2 years at Walter Reed Medical Center recovering. He had traumatic brain injury, but he was doing really well. He finally came home. The first week that he was home, his young kids, his wife had left him during the process, but his kids came, and the family went to celebrate at a Six Flags amusement park. And for some reason, the staff thought it was okay to put him on a roller coaster that only had a lap belt, didn't have shoulder straps. He was thrown from the coaster and killed instantly. And that was the first funeral I did as a pastor. And I can remember the community, like, there was almost like a voice of people that were just angry at God, that were like, you know, how could God do this to him? Like, he delivered him. He had died on the battlefield. He died in surgery. They revived him. He went through 2 years of all this. He finally comes home to be with his family and his kids, and he is taken tragically. How could God allow this? And it was this rage. And the rage was built on expectations that people had that really weren't realistic. And in trying to help people understand the sovereignty of God, understand man's choice, man's will in the whole thing, and understanding that their expectations for what is fair and what isn't fair weren't realistic. As parents, as husbands and wives, as people in relationships, we need to understand that realistically, life isn't all rainbows and butterflies, that there are good times and there are bad times, that there are victories and triumphs, and then there's tragedies, and we all have them. It's part of the human experience. And while we may not like them, as you heard last Thursday when we interviewed Dion in her story of her family being taken, but her saying, but God equipped me for this journey. I didn't feel ready for it, but he told me, I've equipped you for this. And he's been with her. And I look at Kristen and what she's gone through with the cancer and the chemo treatments. And yeah, we don't like it. It's not fair. But that is part of the human experience. It's the good and the bad and the realistic expectations that we have. I see this a lot coming through the Facebook group or through emails that we get, is people have the expectation that homeschooling and parenting and family is going to all be wonderful. And it can be. There are wonderful moments in these times, but we also have to prepare our hearts that there are days that just aren't that much fun, that sometimes our kids are going to fight us on it because they're little versions of us. You know, we almost, in going into the school year, have to say, I have 180 days. 90 days are going to be good. 90 days are going to be bad. And when I have a bad day, I can chalk it up to, that's just one of our bad days. We'll have 90 good days, 90 bad days based on a 180-day school year. So that your expectations are realistic in the way things really happen. Sometimes we find a curriculum, and maybe it's Master Books, but you find a curriculum and you have high expectations for what that curriculum is going to do. And then when it gets into the real world and it starts actually being used, you realize, it isn't meeting the expectations that I have. And we have to ask ourselves, were my expectations too high? Or, is there a change that's needed? But sometimes it's just a matter of not factoring into the fact that we're dealing with little humanoids that are prone to not be in our control. The moment I take anything outside of me, which is barely in my own self-control, I interject one of my children who is full of more of me, and then try to do something with them. I have to factor in a lot of conditions into that, right? So to be upset or to gauge my happiness on an unhappy day, or they fought me on this concept, or things just weren't working, or my in-laws won't leave me alone, whatever, it isn't realistic. So you think about it, in life, when things don't go our way, we tend to look for somebody to blame, or we're upset with God because he did this to us, and how could he have allowed this to happen? We did everything right, and this is what's happening. God is so much more concerned about us than just today. He's bigger than today. Okay, if you get nothing else from this, get this. God is bigger than today, and he is concerned about our eternity. He's concerned about spending time with us outside of today. Today, I care about today because I'm living today. I'm locked in today. I'm locked into the present. I may have the experiences of the past that affect that. I may have the hope of tomorrow, but the reality is I'm right here. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I can touch, I can feel, I can taste, I can see, I can hear. This is the experience I have. God is outside that. So here's a concept, the transcendence of God. So one of my, the designer that works with us in marketing did a missions trip, and when she came back, she prepared this box. And so if I could, scripture says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? And in the first day, he creates all of this, all that we see in the time, in space, and he builds basically the parameters of creation. Notice in this box, and I'm gonna pretend that I prepared this box, even though I didn't, but in this box, I'm not in this box. Now I'm present with this box, right? And so with the transcendence of God, the creator, he creates time. And so we have creation here, and I'm part of creation because I'm fully present inside of this box as well because of my presence. And inside of that, there are, we've got a card, we've got an awesome coffee cup, I've got some imported cocoa from Guatemala. All of that is part of creation. I'm not in that. I'm outside of that. I'm present. I'm in the beginning. I'm in the end. I'm all in between because I'm right here, but I'm not in that. And we often take God and we put him in the box with us and we make him part of this mix. God is also preparing us for when we come outside of this box into eternity. And so right now we're stuck in these moments, right? In this box, in this place, and God is here and he's present and he's working and preparing us for when we step outside of that into eternity. And so that's the transcendence of God. And it's a really important concept to understand that in everything I'm experiencing today, God is present in what's happening, but he's also so much more mindful than what's inside that box because he's outside of that box, and that's what he's preparing us for. So think of this, when I take my kids to the store, a lot of times I will preface the trip and I will say to my kids, we're not getting anything for you. We're going to get milk. We're going to buy a replacement tire. What I'm not doing is I'm not going to go into the toy section or go buy you a bottle of soda, just so you know that when we walk into the store, that's the expectation, right? So when our kids walk into the store, they're like, okay, Dad's not buying me a soda, and I have this realistic expectation that we go. But have you ever had one of your kids just melt down because they had the expectation that you were going to buy them the bottle of soda, or they were going to get a candy bar, or they were going to get a new Nerf gun, right? And so they have this expectation, whether it was a realistic expectation or not. When that expectation isn't met, they melt down. And you often well, who told you were getting a bottle of soda? They decided that. That's what happens with us in life so many times. And God in his word, if we listen to his word, he says, count it all joy when you encounter trials and tribulations, because it's producing something in you. And know that you may make your plans, but I'm directing your steps because all you can see and experience is what's inside this box. But as God, I can experience and I understand so much more than what you do. So you plan your way inside this box, but if I think it's better for you, I'm going to make sure you take a different path. And our expectations sometimes conflict and collide with what God does in his omnipotence and omnipresence and in his will, because we have these expectations that this is the way it works inside the box. And God should be more like a genie in the bottle. So if I've prayed and I've said my prayers and read my Bible and I haven't sinned in 3 days, then he should answer all of my prayers. And he's looking at it from a whole different viewpoint. Well, it's the same in our homeschools. We have these expectations of how things are supposed to go, and we deal with a lot of variables. We deal with children, we deal with outside influences and stresses and all of these things. You know, a great scripture, and I posted it on this video, is James 4:13. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such a town and spend a year there and trade and make profit. That's an expectation, right? Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. That little phrase, if the Lord wills, that gives us such an opportunity to say, as we approach the homeschool year, as I approach parenting, as I approach my marriage, if the Lord wills, it takes the God factor and brings it into our expectations. And it allows him room to be God, and it gives me permission to allow him to be God in my life. That's just profound. Because it's hard for me to let him be God, and it's hard for me to accept that he's God. But he's going to be God because he's loving. And if he's sitting here and watching me destroy myself and knows that in eternity it's not going to be good, I believe fully that he is going to intervene. And even at times when we don't understand what he's doing in this box and it doesn't make sense, the character of God is always true. He's a God of love and mercy. He's a God of justice. He's true to who God is. And so we can always count on his character. That's one thing we can expect, is God is true to who he is. But even in dealing with other people, why do we have agreements? Do we have agreements because we expect people to act on what they say? Not at all. We have agreements because we know that people will fail to meet up to their expectations. So an agreement keeps us honest. When you sign an agreement, you take out money and sign an agreement and say, I'm going to pay this back. The reason a bank has you sign the agreement is because they know that if you don't sign that agreement, you're more prone to fail at doing that. So we have agreements to actually help us keep us honest to the expectations we commit to. But when it comes to our schoolrooms and our families and these things, I think sometimes it's not that we need to have low expectations and low standards. I think it's that we need to hold those expectations loosely. When you're dealing with children, anything can happen. Hormones, just meltdown, struggles, these things that will cause us some frustration. And then instead of being frustrated because they don't look like everybody else's child, it's releasing that and then saying, okay, are my expectations unrealistic here? Am I setting the expectations so high that I'm imposing my will on something that they're not even committed to? And we see that often too, where so-and-so sets the bar up here, and I'm looking at that, and then I try to set my bar at the same place, and that's not, for my family, that's not what the Lord has called us to, or even what we're capable of doing, because there's a lot of other variables, just when you have, like for our family, when you have 9 kids and you're running a business and you're in ministry and you're serving in different capacities and still trying to have some quality of life, you can't live up to all the expectations that a family who only has 2 children has. And vice versa, they can't live up to all the same things that a family of 9 can do. So I think my suggestion to having a happier homeschool is to evaluate your expectations. The places where an expectation has met reality, reality isn't matching that expectation, and it's causing you anxiety or friction or tension. Typically, if it involves controlling somebody else, if it's about controlling or an expectation placed on a spouse, you really need to evaluate that, because you have no control over a spouse. You only have control over your own actions. And so if your expectations are that they should be taking out the trash, and they should know that if they loved you, they would do that, and you've never really communicated that or had that discussion, and they didn't fully agree to that, being upset about that and that expectation may not be realistic for the relationship. Same with our children. We expect them to want to come to the table and learn and just be excited about learning. But that's dependent upon our children. And then, have we ever actually had a communication about that? Have we ever done anything to make sure that our expectations lined up and met reality? So for this tip and having a happier homeschool, I don't think the secret to happiness is low expectations. I think that's kind of pathetic. But I think making sure that our expectations do have the God factor in it, if the Lord wills, we will have a great school year. And even in the tough times and even in the challenges, we realize that this is making us stronger. One of my children took a job, and they were kind of, it just didn't go the way that they thought it should. And they were looking at it like it was an awful failure. And we started breaking down all of these things that they were able to learn from the position, like negotiating your wage and communication and all of these things. And when we realized that, yeah, this was a bit of a trial here for a short amount of time, but the life lessons that were learned in that, if you take it like that, like everything that we go through, the successes, the failures, the triumphs, and the tragedies give us opportunity and it serves us, then we're able to have a whole different perspective. So as parents, we have to know good days and bad days and expect the bad day. And when a bad day happens, just say, oh, this is a bad day. I expected bad days. I don't expect more bad days than good days. It's going to happen both ways. And praise the Lord, and through his grace and mercy, we've had many more good days than we've had bad days in life. But I know that there are seasons where it's like every day is a bad day and you can't even hardly breathe. And that's the beauty also of seasons, that if you're in one of those places, that you can be reassured that God, he designed this beautiful pattern of seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. And in each season, something is happening to prepare it for the next season. So in spring, we're preparing for the growth, and in summer and harvest, and then in the fall, everything dies, and all of that was a fruit for yesterday, and what was yesterday's harvest becomes the fertilizer for the next season. And that's the way life is for us, that even like the season that our family has been in with Kristen and the breast cancer and the trials that this has been, this will become fertilizer for what the Lord is doing in the next season. This is going to feed that. It's going to serve us in that capacity. And even if it doesn't serve us in this lifetime, then I know that the Lord will use this and he's changing us and preparing us for eternity. So nothing is wasted in God's economy, even though we may think it is, because when we're stuck inside this box, we don't have the view that he does. So, all right. Well, hopefully this was a helpful tip, and I'm not sure that I had a really good conclusion outside of just making sure that your expectations have the God factor built into it, that if the Lord wills, and even in the midst of the good times and the bad times. And when I have a high standard of perfectionism, that I expect everything to be perfect, and it's unrealistic, that maybe I I need to evaluate that and say, is this a realistic expectation? Does it allow for God? Does it give him opportunity to work in this situation? Am I placing my desires for how other people should behave on them? Because in a relationship, right, I can desire that you behave a certain way, but ultimately, if I try to force my will upon you, that's not going to be a healthy relationship for either one of us, and it tends to become very unhealthy and toxic. So when I have the expectation that the only thing I can really control here is myself, and even if you don't perform like I want, that doesn't mean it has to affect my happiness. And my joy can be in knowing that there is a God today who is sitting above and outside of creation, but also very present in creation. And he cares for me and he loves me and he's looking out for my good. So even in this, he's present. All right. Well, I do pray this year is a fantastic year for each family, and that the Lord is present in your homeschools. I pray that the curriculum, there was an awesome post. It was Tabitha Dawes had posted about maybe too much Bible. And, our desire, the faith builder guarantee, that we guarantee the faith of your child to grow is using the curriculum, is based on the fact that we just want to keep making aware that God is on the throne, and that whether we bow to him today, we will bow. Scripture says every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that he is Lord. That's ultimately what we prepare our children for. And we want them to know when they study math, God is present. When they study science, God is present. When they study history, God has been present from the beginning to the end. He's already present throughout this entire experience of creation. When they study spelling, even the very ability to communicate language and is amazing. And it was all by his design that we can communicate. And when we see the different dialects and languages and we understand the Tower of Babel, we have to understand there was a God who purposed this, created this, and did this. And I want my students to understand how present God is. Every atom of our bodies, every molecule, every piece of our body is being held together by his power. So awesome. Okay. Hey, be sure to comment for a chance of 2,500 reward points. We'll go through and pick out. I think I have a couple of other videos. I have to choose a random choice of somebody to have that as well. And know again that we are working hard to get your orders out, and we just appreciate your business and appreciate your support and being part of this group, and the moms who've begun to step up and help new moms and help the moderators answering questions and that type of thing, helped us keep the group, the integrity of the group and the rules that we have. Thank you very much, because this is our tribe, this is our community, and we just absolutely love seeing moms who've been using Master Books for a few years come on board and begin to help new moms on board. And then when, something comes into the group that just breaks up the dynamic that we want to achieve, your ability to come in is so valuable. So, hey guys, God bless you. Have a fantastic week. Next Tuesday, I will be showing the cumulative record that we were talking about that I hope to have released earlier, but due to the busy season and stuff, it's taken me a little bit longer, but it will be available for sure next Tuesday, and I will demo that on Tuesday for everybody. All right. God bless you guys.